and welcome back for the final time to Week 6, Day 2 of the Hearthstone Global Games, where we're about to watch Netherlands versus Peru. I'm joined again by Sottle, who's going to join me as we guide you through this game.
Sounds good. I don't know how much of a guide we will be, but we will at least try and bring something to the action. And I think, yet again, it's a story that you've been bringing up over and over again, I think, today, Falcone, is this is kind of the day of the underdogs. We called it out at the start that there were, a pretty heavy expected favorite in most of these series that we were going to see. And so far, with devastating consistency, those favorites have lost.
Yeah, even beginning yesterday with Austria versus Russia.
Right.
Austria with the surprising, I think surprising for everyone. You don't expect Russia to lose. I know you don't. You specifically don't expect Russia to lose. But all day long today and yesterday, the underdogs have been winning, which means maybe we should go into this series thinking that Peru has a chance.
Not quite sure if that's how it works, but nonetheless, if you want to set up a favorite, it is, of course, the Netherlands. Their lineup incredibly powerful between the likes of Thijs, of course, back-to-back European champion 2 years in a row. Tyler, who, of course, the term ladder grinder, ladder god, this has been thrown around and beaten into the ground about so very many people over the last 12 months or so, and us as casters are the ones who are guilty of doing that way too much. And what that does is it devalues the phrase and takes it away from a man who truly deserves it, like Tyler.
Right, Tyler is always online, always streaming, sometimes, impromptu 24-hour stream. And you know what? No matter how fatigued he gets, he's still top 100, top 50, top 10 legend. Firstly, though, it's going to be Theo versus Uchiha Sasuke. Did I say that right?
That'll do.
Yeah. That'll do. Oh, that means I said it wrong. Mage and Priest versus Shaman and Warrior. This is the special, or the unique Hearthstone Global Games format. It's going to be best out of 5. Each player or each team has decided in advance which order the players are going to play, distributed 8 of the 9 classes between them. If we get to game number 5, that will be the ace match, where one of the players will play a second time. The decks they'll have to choose between is the deck they didn't pick earlier and their 9th ace deck.
And as you can see, Theo versus Uchiha Sasuke are coming up first, and it's going to be Mage picked, Priest eliminated, versus the Warrior pick and the Shaman eliminated. So Mage versus Warrior coming up first. And again, if this is, it's basically, this is going to be break by what type of warrior we're looking at. If the warrior is Quest Warrior, then basically any kind of mage you throw into it will be quite favored. If the warrior is Pirate Warrior, then any type of mage you can throw into it will be fairly unfavored.
That being said, we've seen some impressive performances just today with the mage, with the warrior, the Quest Warrior outlasting the mage. Not needing the quest. They don't need that to win. They just need to press that armor up button a lot, deal with the mage's threats one by one, and eventually, sometimes they can just win the game, not through fatigue in the Hearthstone sense, but through fatigue because the mage runs out of stuff.
That is fair. I think that applies. When we saw that happen today, it was with Secret Mage in particular, right? And I think that's where it applies, because Secret Mage is the deck that is, the lightest on value. It's the deck that can actually run out of stuff. Whereas, a Gunther Mage can just continually cycle couriers into more cards, glyphs into more cards, arcane intellect, etc., etc. And actually, when you break it down, if you're going for that outlast your damage plan with Quest Warrior, Gunther Mage actually has more damage than Freeze Mage when you break it all down.
That's really, really terrifying when you think of it that way, especially as Gunther Mage also has Medivh the Guardian.
It also has
Portal.
10 times more minions than Freeze Mage.
Actual board presence in the late game. It is going to be the Pirate Warrior, though, versus some mage, probably Gunther. As we can see, there's a Polymorph in the hand, and I don't think Polymorph is very common in Secret Mage.
Yeah, Secret Mage is still a deck that's in flux to a sense, where no one's really quite sure whether it should be aggressive tempo deck with Cabal Lackeys, or more similar to the Gunther Mage, or somewhere in between. But yeah, Polymorph and now Meteor seems to be indicating it's towards that slower kind of strategy. But Peru staring down at a hand of double Frothing Berserkers with the coin is a pretty tempting keep. That is one of your biggest minions when you're playing up against a deck that can actually do things against your early game, like Volcanic Potion, Frostbolt, your minions just having the ping hero power to pick off 1/1s and 2/1s. Frothing Berserker landing early is by far the biggest problem for your opponent, so no surprise to see one being kept here, but that's a patches.
I was going to say, he wants to maybe throw something away, get a 1-drop, but that's not the 1-drop that I would have been referring to. Though, I guess it's the play. I don't think you just play nothing this turn, do you? Then again, you just play into a ping.
I think that's fine. I think because second frothing is now picked up, play patches, entice the ping, and then go coin frothing into frothing is a perfectly reasonable line because you don't really want to like give your opponent free reign here just to develop whatever they want, just like slam a 2-3 on the board. Although the counter argument to that is 1-1 patches is your 1-drop. If there is an Archaeologist in hand for the mage for Netherlands, they'll probably just drop the 2-3 into this anyway, so you can't actually get your opponent to ping if they have that 2-3 available.
Luckily for Peru, no Archaeologist to be seen just yet, so we are more than likely just going to see, well, I think it's the only play really, Frostbolt patches? No, I don't think
Unlikely to Frostbolt the patches this turn.
And Frostbolt Face doesn't achieve much either just yet. So pinging away the patches, and as you said now, coin frothing Berserker into frothing Berserker. This is going to be hard to keep up with.
Oh, that patches draw is now so savage because of the South Sea Captain. Like, if that was just a different 1-drop potentially, or if there was just no 1-drop at all, he would just have coin 5-5 worth of stats this turn, 2 of which would have charge. Like, that's just the difference between drawing patches and it still being in your deck for Pirate Warrior in particular is just night and day.
I don't think Team Peru care too much, though. They've got Frothing Berserker into Frothing Berserker.
I think they care enormously, Falcone.
I don't think they care at all. Frostbolt is going to put a pause to this Frothing Berserker, but then the second one comes down, and Netherlands aren't going to have any way of dealing with them. They can ping away the first one, sure, but...
Yeah, I don't think you Frostbolt this turn because that locks you into a mandatory ping next turn.
Yeah,
and then
true.
what are you doing with your ping next turn? You can't actually develop anything. So I think you just have to drop Courier this turn, see if you can pick up something playable for next turn. If not, then your feasible turn for next turn is just a Frostbolt ping if the frothing goes face. If it trades, you only need to do half of that. Perhaps you can get away then with developing a second Cabal Courier, depending on what the board state is.
Yep.
But mana efficiency is actually very important at this point.
You were talking earlier about how strong Archaeologist would be for Netherlands earlier, but I think it's also worth noting Mana Worm on turn 1 completely missing. How different would the board be already if the Mana Worm was picked up on turn 1?
Yeah. Shadowbolt is a good pull here, though, for sure. And we'll be able to answer any kind of mid-game threat very, very cleanly. Shadowbolt, pretty clean card against Pirate Warrior. I remember back in the day, the Rat told me some stats that he had about his Reno Warlock that he played against aggressive decks and how he was actually beating them with high 40% consistency, even in games where Reno was not being drawn, or specifically in games where Reno was not being drawn. And it's because of how efficient things like Shadowbolt are against some of these mid-game aggressive minions. You know, Frothing Berserkers, South Sea Captains, Cultists, Korkron Elites even. You know, the amount of things that it answers very nicely is long and arduous.
Deal 4 damage against a 4/4 does seem good. The only problem with Netherlands' turn here is that they're not quite able to squeeze in the Frostbolt as well just yet, meaning regardless of what their decision is now, one of these Frothing Berserkers will be left alive to deal 5 or more damage.
Yeah, this turn is super awkward again, still on just the mana efficiency issue. I mean, Frostbolt ping on the 4/4 frothing is just a nightmare because then you're left with a 6/2 smashing you in the face the next turn. Which, you know, maybe in some worlds you'd be willing to suck that up and say, okay, I'll deal with it. I'll deal with taking that damage once, then next turn I have a clear. But then your follow-up turn is Shadowbolt Archaeologist to clear out the 6/2. Which, yeah, it's mana efficient, it's a decent turn 5, but in the meantime, your opponent's going to have developed possibly 1 or 2 extra minions behind that. You're just going to be behind the play the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, dealing with the frothing with more health, with the Frostbolt, just seems impractical when you've got a Shadowbolt in hand that can perfectly and cleanly deal with the other one anyway.
Right.
I don't mind this play at all. I doubt that Peru ever trade this either. They want another Fiery War Axe right now. They want to just smack that and go face with a 6-attack Frothing. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. Heroic Strike feels like a bit of a waste here, though, and also very mana inefficient.
Yeah, it's one of those irritating turns where you curse the fact that Heroic Strike and Dread Corsair don't work together.
Oh, that would just be a little bit bonkers. Again, though, something that you said earlier is that Peru would be upset with the fact they drew patches. Now they've got South Sea Captain in hand. I said they didn't care. Now I'm going to go back on myself and agree with you.
Told you they care.
I think
you
Peru
always care.
I think they care very, very much, especially now it's 2 South Sea Captains on the board. Having more cheap pirates hitting the board straight away would be pretty good.
This is not going to work out for Peru either. I mean, in theory, it's a reasonable turn. You know, hide the Frothing behind the Dread Corsair and say, okay, your only real clean answer to this now is probably a Fireball, because you've just used a Frostbolt. You're unlikely to have the second one. Shadowbolt and Ping now this turn is just perfect answers for Netherlands in this spot.
Yeah, it works out nicely, clears away the whole board.
What to do?
And then Pirate Warrior, still no weapon in hand, no Arcanite Reaper to follow up with. I think both of these guys, apart from the double Frothing Berserker, both of these guys have drawn pretty poorly this game, but it seems at the moment at least that it's the Mage coming out on top. If the Mage gets to turn 9, a defensive Alexstrasza can just seal the deal and win the Mage the game.
Yeah, there's only been one thing wrong with Peru's draw this game. Everything else has been pretty much fantastic. It was just that Patches draw. Like, if you just transformed that Patches into Nazos first, mate, this draw was insane.
Yep.
Like, absolutely insane. They would have multiple pirates on board. The captains would be buffing pirates. They'd have the 1/3 weapons, so cultists would be buffing the weapons. That one difference of drawing Patches instead of drawing Nazos first, mate, has turned a god tier hand into a trash tier hand.
Right. Ice Block picked up from Theo here, which I mentioned earlier, the Alexstrasza if the Mage gets to turn 9. Well, with Ice Block it's even easier because the Mage only has to survive until turn 8, then the Ice Block goes up, then the following turn is turn 9, then the Mage can heal back up to 15. It's a little bit situational because if the Pirate Warrior's built up a board at that stage, then it won't necessarily earn the Mage the win automatically, but it's definitely a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel like this is almost a free turn for Netherlands. The fact they now have the Ice Block, they can use this turn to develop block and just play Arcane Intellect if they want to. There's no massive reason to answer this board state. They have Meteor, so, you know, if an additional minion gets played alongside this captain, that's just going to be a perfect clear for them anyway. But they might just be looking at this hand and saying, hey, like, Meteor on 6, Firelands Portal on 7, Block on 8, Alex on 9, and that might just be their game plan going forward.
Meteoring this board seems like a bit of a waste of damage. I very much like the Ice Block here, and going to drop Counterspell too, which can actually save a lot of damage against the Pirate Warrior. If it hits an upgrade after an Arcanite Reaper, great, you've just saved yourself a lot of damage. If it hits Heroic Strike, you've saved yourself 4 damage.
Right.
I don't think there's any spell that the Warrior has that doesn't just deal a ton of damage.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you say Meteor there would have been a massive waste of damage, and yes, it's horribly inefficient.
Yeah.
15 damage removal into a 3/3, but look at what just happened, because you left one solitary pirate on the board for Pirate Warrior, right? It's a tribal deck. If you can do anything you can to disrupt that tribal synergy, it overvalues your cards, right? Like, if you know, there is a buff that the cards you're up against naturally have for being pirates, where you can just afford to use premium stuff against them if it denies that synergy.
So the thing that Theo does have going for him here is that he will survive long enough to play the Alexstrasza. Problem is, as I said before, now Peru have a board. So just playing Alexstrasza and healing yourself back up to 15 on turn 9 isn't actually good enough.
Oh, will he? If his block,
yeah, he might not actually.
if his block goes down next turn, there's a whole extra turn he needs to find somewhere along the line. It's not guaranteed at this point by any means, which is why my brain kind of leapt to that Meteor on 6, Firelands on 7, Block on 8 kind of plan. Like, that just seemed to get you there consistently.
So I guess this is the safest play. Just Firelands Portal away one of the captains. You said earlier today, the chance of getting a 5-mana card with Taunt is very, well, not very high, but higher than you'd expect it to
11
be.
out of 69 is so much higher than I thought it was going to be. When I started digging in to get those stats, I was not expecting it to be, you know, a little bit below 1 in 6.
That's no good, though, and I apologize. This game might not go on long enough for the Alexstrasza. I mean, Theo has to, like, dig for a second Ice Block this turn or something. And,
it's a perfect pop at 1 as well.
yeah.
Because of the weapon buff.
If he does find a second Ice Block by using an Arcane Intellect, then that's great. But in the meantime, he's not dealt with this board of pirates. Looks like Peru might just take this.
It's going to be a little bit awkward if the board state can be dealt with. Peru will have pretty much full information that they're facing down Counterspell as the second secret here. They know it's not Barrier, they know it's not Vaporize, so like potentially, I don't know, like Spellbender and Mana Bind are the other possibilities.
Entity and Potion of Polymorph also have been counted out.
Yeah.
That's not an Ice Block. It is just Ice Block now that leaves Theo in the game, isn't it?
Arcane Intellect into Glyph into Nova. No, then the weapon just goes. I mean, yeah, if they could lock out all the damage they can see, of course, the Heroic Strike can't pop, even if, or even like a drawn Mortal Strike couldn't pop because of the counterspell.
That could actually.
It could in this situation, right? But from Netherlands' perspective, I'm talking from, right? If they can lock out all the damage, then they know the counterspell will protect them against a Mortal Strike. Unfortunately for them, the one card in hand can already clear that counterspell, so this might just be checkmate at this point.
Yep, with the conclusion, they have to draw cards, don't get what they want. This game is over for Theo and Team Netherlands going to take the first loss of the series. Is this the history of today repeating on itself?
I mean, it could very well be. This game is literally just one turn in it, really. I mean, not that the Alexstrasza was a guaranteed savior, but being that one turn away from Alexstrasza, if the block was still up, they could have fully committed this turn to just, say, Meteor to remove a huge amount of the board state, then gone for the defensive Alexstrasza the turn after. Peru just cast the Heroic Strike just to make sure they have complete, full information, make sure nothing ridiculous is going to happen that they could have to worry about.
Not sure what Theo was hoping for there, why he didn't concede a little bit sooner. Maybe trying to trick Peru into thinking it was somehow an ice block, which wouldn't have been possible. And it just seemed weird.
I played 2 ice blocks at once. Yeah.
It just seems weird that they didn't concede at that point. We've seen a lot of early concedes over the last couple of days, actually. Well, not early concedes, but as soon as one of these players realizes, hey, this game's over, they tend to hit the button. They don't really stall around for long. Next up, though, arguably the most popular Hearthstone player out there right now, Tice.
Big words.
Big words. Definitely one of the most popular.
I mean, you used the word arguable. We could definitely have an argument about it, and you'd definitely be wrong.
Right. Wow, okay. He's going to be bringing the Hunter.
I'm kidding. I love Tice.
Kishtar going to be bringing the Paladin. Well, the thing is, Tice is one of these streamers where he has a huge stream. He's very entertaining, but he also just goes around winning tournaments as well. Like you've been talking about Kalento. When he chooses to enter the tournaments, he does a great job. Tice is the same. He has so many wins under his belt recently, and his stream just goes from strength to strength.
Yeah, I think in Tice's case, maybe he suffered a little bit from the switch to streaming. You know, Tice's record historically speaks for itself. It's untouchable. Like, no one can criticize the things this guy has achieved in the game. But, you know, since he really did push a focus towards streaming, you know, he doesn't even, say, like travel as much as the rest of the guys, right? Like, you know, Radu will go anywhere to play competitive Hearthstone, and G2 will send him, whereas a lot of the time, Tice is just happy to stay and stream. And, you know, why not, right? If you can just turn your stream on to 10,000 people every day, then that is a solid, secure living you are earning yourself for a very long time. And I think just a little bit his competitive prowess has suffered because of that focus, and of course it will. That's what, to me, is so amazing in particular about Kalento, because it just seems like it hasn't bothered him at all, the fact that he can go like 6 months without playing a tournament.
It's also a different type of stream, isn't it? Like, Kalento doesn't go out of his way to be too entertaining. He's straight to the gameplay. Looking at the other side, though, Team Peru and Kishtar, they're going to be feeling confident coming into this series, 1 win ahead already. But now Kishtar has to play against Tice, and that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And, you know, everything that I just said does not change the fact that, you know, Tice is a fantastic Hearthstone player, right? Like, form is temporary, class is permanent, is the old cliche, right? And, like, he might be a little bit rusty now when it comes to super high-level competitive play, but the level of class, intelligence, ability, and knowledge of this game that got him to be a back-to-back European champion, that does not go away overnight or even over 6 months of, you know, focusing on streaming.
Very fast mulligan there for Kishtar. Not ending very well either. I don't think he wants any of these cards in the early game against a Hunter. Tice on the other side, his hand not looking bad at all. Alley Cat and Kindly Grandmother, both solid early cards. Houndmaster might even be worth a keep here as well.
Yeah, neither of these decks looking like they are the very most aggressive forms of the class that they could be. In that case, when it's like super aggressive Hunter up against super aggressive Murloc Paladin, like, 1-drop is just king. Like, if there are cards in your hand that don't read 1 on them, you throw them away and you find those 1-drops, because both of the decks just snowball the board so effectively when they hit 1-drop. Since we're seeing, you know, it's an equality Primordial Drake Paladin, and it's a, you know, high main Houndmaster kind of Hunter that's coming out, It won't be necessarily won or lost on game 1 and 2. On turn 1 and 2. But hey, Alley Cat into Crackling Razormaw or Alley Cat into Grandma into Crackling Razormaw is about as strong as it gets.
Hunter has always tended to be pretty good against the kind of slower, mid-rangey, control-y decks, just because the strength of Savannah Highmane is so powerful. Primordial Drake will do a good job of stemming that, but it's not quite going to be enough, especially when you look at the start Tice has got here. The 2 1-drops, he's got Razormaw next turn if he wants it, he's got Kindly Grandmother if he wants.
Yeah.
How does Kishtar keep up with this?
It's a very, very good question, especially now.
Oh my goodness.
Especially now. This is my experience, by the way. Like, I know Murloc-based Paladins are one of the most effective decks in the game, but whenever I try to climb ladder with them, I usually just immediately hit Hunters with Hungry Crab. And I don't know why, because I never play these guys with any other deck.
Again, look at the spring playoff deck lists that we've been seeing on Twitter recently. There's Hungry Crabs in so many decks, and Paladin is just being forcibly, shoved out of the way. Like, just hard target Paladin. Great.
For the Razormaw this turn. Gives him a lot of power in play right now, is the most board dominance he can have, but none of these are particularly useful. +3 attack is just fine. Does mean he has to trade off the incorrect cat like an absolute monster, though, which I do not approve of in any way, shape, or form. But he is representing a lot of damage at this point. I was wondering maybe instead about just the Kindly Grandmother line and then looking to land Razormaw on that instead, because you can find a lot more upside. Buffing a Death Rattle minion and then using a trade in, right? You can get like +3 attack, trade into a bigger minion, etc., etc.
Nope, Tice just going for pure aggression here, and quite rightly so. How does a Paladin deal with a 4/1?
They don't. They quite simply do not. Bluegill Warrior is the only card sometimes that can affect the board from hand before turn 4 in the majority of Paladin decks.
Outdoor Peacekeeper would have reset it to a 1/1, whilst wasting a really powerful card that could have been great against the Savannah Highmane later. But Peru don't have any of these cards at their disposal. He's just Kishtar's just going to have to take some damage and then take some more damage.
Yeah, this is the power of what Tice doing it his way has led to. It's meant that now going into the Consecration turn, he has that Kindly Grandmother protection against Consecration, whereas doing it the other way around could potentially have led to him being blown out by Conk in this spot. But you were talking about like the turn 6 advantage that Hunters classically have against other mid-range decks because of Highmane. Against Paladin these days, that's not really the case. Firstly, because of Aldor, which you brought up. But secondly, if your turn 6 is just, okay, slam Highmane, and you still have like a minion in play, well, then they just jam Spikeridge Steed on their minion. And then your Highmane doesn't really have much of an impact on that anyway. So if Hunter is going to win this matchup, more often than not, it's not down to Highmanes on turn 6. It's down to this kind of stuff you're seeing right here, which is just early aggression, too much damage, finish the game out with hero powers later on.
I've just been looking at Kishtar's background, by the way, and it reminded me that he doesn't have the best competitive pedigree, but he is a very popular streamer. So obviously, part of the beauty of the Hearthstone Global Games is that we have a great mix of competitive players and streamers, and this is where on the spectrum Kishtar falls. So he will be feeling the nerves here. Tice does have the pedigree we were talking about before, but Kishtar, he's got the whole of Peru behind him. He will have, I'm guessing, received the most votes for entry into the competition. And that's just a little bit of his background.
He looks like a streamer's room
It
behind
does,
him,
exactly, right? That's what reminded me of it.
It looks like someone that has paid special attention to the fact that what is behind them is going to be on camera at all times.
I was just admiring how nice it all looks, and then it clicked. I'm like, oh yeah, he's the streamer.
In the meantime, though, Tice has just continued to push the damage here. Death Rattle onto the Crackling Razormaw with the second Crackling Razormaw means that his board is just incredibly sticky and resilient against any kind of Consecration play. He's just going to keep pushing here, and now, although I said that Highmane can quite easily be countered by a couple of things in the late game, if you've got this level of board dominance and you can afford to trade away your opponent's existing minions and then drop a Highmane behind all this, well then yeah, that card will do just fine.
Yeah, 2 Death Rattles on the board as well. That there is some resilience. Stampeding Kodo, not looking like it's going to have much of an impact against this hand. Maybe just end up killing off a hero power token.
Yeah, it might be useful, like, say, if a Stonehill comes down, you might be able to push through it with Kodo for lethal, maybe, like that kind of situation.
Even
but
a Finger is possible.
yeah, I mean, that is why you play Stampeding Kodo, right? Like, that is literally why you put this card in decks. We've seen Jade Druid, for example, now running the Curator package and running Kodo. Firstly, because they haven't really recovered with a 5-drop from the lack of Azure Drake. Yeah. But secondly, like, if you can find some excuse to put Kodo in your deck and just get some free wins against Finger decks, then sure, why wouldn't you?
I like Kishtar targeting the 3-1 with Death Rattle with the Adult Peacekeeper there, forcing the trade from Tice with the one that doesn't have Death Rattle, meaning there's not going to be more immediate pressure on the board. However, Tice just picked up Scavenging Hyena, and he has a board full of beasts that can be traded away. That card has the potential to get very out of control very quickly. And the thing is, if Tice trades away his board to create this big Scavenging Hyena, Tarim isn't even that strong, because Tice's board leaves behind 2 1/1s and a 3-2.
Right. Is the Hyena here, though, good enough to get you off the high main plan? You do have, like, Hyena Unleash at any time you want it, but to be fair, the any time you want it might just be right now. My only concern is that Netherlands are so far ahead now at this point that you have to start asking yourself the question, how do I lose?
Yep.
And the one way you might lose in this spot is an Equality Consecration clear, which you are going directly into to a turn 6. So high main and then test for that kind of stuff and then follow up later with the Unleash would be a little bit more resilient against that. But the way this is being traded out right now, it looks like he's retaining the Grandmother in original form. So he would still retain a 3-2 on the board through exactly this top deck. And look at what that meant.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, what does this play actually lose to? And there it is. There's the answer. It doesn't strictly lose to Equality Consecration.
No.
As you said, the big bad wolf will stay on the board. But that is almost a reset switch for Peru.
You have to ask the question, right? Being so far ahead, did you really need to take this risk? And I like that they didn't go all the way in, right? They went 95% all in, and by holding back the Grandmother, they've kept this 3-2, they get to push 3 more, and I guess from Netherlands' perspective, this is just fine. Now just backing this up with a high main after they've already seen an Outdoor Peacekeeper be used. So definitely can't criticize the play too much, but even though, you know, this was a game that seemed fairly straightforward for the Netherlands, something that they've been incredibly advantaged in the whole time, pretty much. They have now perhaps just given a window for Peru to try and get back into it.
Yeah, the problem with the high main is this exact play. Sunkeeper Tarim trades effectively against both of these minions. Tice is going to need a little something extra to push forward. Ooh. He does have Tundra Rhino, which will allow him to... Well, the high main on its own can now trade away Tarim. And the Direwolf is going to make these trades a little bit sweeter.
So high main Wolf would already trade through.
Now high main.
Sorry, high main Hyena would
now
already
high main,
traded through.
Single Hyena will do it though, thanks to the Direwolf alpha.
Right,
there,
exactly.
Which is actually really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, it's not lethal, is it? No, it's close.
No, it's 9, I think, gets to connect to face from here. Yeah. Which means it is lethal through Consecration. It's not lethal through Primordial Drake, though. Oh, sorry, Direwolf gets to charge as well. It's 2 extra even. Right. And Coin Crab is lethal in the end.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I forgot that the Direwolf got to charge as well. I was giving credit to like the Tundra Rhino charging, the Hyenas charging.
I remember the Direwolf, but forgot the Coin Hungry Crab was the thing. Hungry Crab, of course, is a beast. It's one of the reasons that you can get away with that tech and the Galactic Crawler in the Hunter and the Token Druid. The beast synergy is so strong. And Tice taking it away after what did get a little bit dicey for him for a few moments there.
I mean, you have to say, you know, we were talking about like, could he afford to get Equality Consecrated in that position? You know, was that the one play that could perhaps lose them the game when they were so far ahead? Well, the answer was a resounding no. I mean, they were fine with Equality. Like, Equality Consecrate happened. It's not like they needed any spectacular draws from there. Like, they picked up the Tundra Rhino, but they had plenty of aggression to back that up anyway. So they, from their perspective, clearly could afford to take the risk against that Equality Consecration. Solid play to retain the 3-2 on the board afterwards with the Grandmother, and then we're just able to finish out the game with the last few pieces of pressure coming through.
The other thing is that the Equality Consecration was, I think, literally the worst case scenario. Without those cards, Peru didn't have a chance to get through the play that Tice made.
Right, but you know, the argument is in that kind of situation, without those cards, they don't really have a chance in any world, regardless of what play you make, right?
Next up is going to be Mitsuhide versus Izzy. Mitsuhide on the Paladin, Izzy on the Druid. I don't think we've seen an awful lot of this matchup lately. In fact, I was saying to Raven earlier, we haven't seen an awful lot of Druid over the last couple of days.
That's probably fair, yeah.
Especially not Jade Druid. It's all been token.
Right, and I'm actually a big fan of both types of Druids these days. I think Jade Druid is one of the strongest decks overall in terms of just, average win rate against the field.
Yeah.
I think now that it's so secure against aggressive decks now, with Earthen Scales being such a great cycle tool off Auctioneer, as well as a useful tool for just rebounding your life total. Tar Creeper as well coming in, and obviously just being able to get Primordial Drakes down on turn 5, 6, depending on how solid your ramp draw has been. Like, that's just backbreaking to aggro. And then, aggro Druid itself is just like the king of the high roll decks. Like, there are draws that you just cannot beat against aggro
As
Druid.
we have witnessed a few times today. The weird thing is about the Jade Druid is that I feel as though week by week with the Hearthstone Global games, we've been seeing the percentage of Druids has been shifting a little bit more each week towards the Jade Druid. Like, originally it was mostly token Druids, and then every week a few more Jade Druids. And now today, this week, just Jade Druids have disappeared. Just weird.
It's true. I think it started off with primarily the Asian countries were favoring the Jade Druid, while Aggro Druid was more popular in the West, and then that kind of bled through, and Jade Druid started to become more popular on this side of the globe as well. And now you're right. It does seem like a nod to Aggro Druid is coming back. And there's actually a variety of different lists as well. Some people are starting to run a no Finger package list, which I personally prefer. I'm sure, like, yes, you can innovate Finger and it's all wonderful in Aggro Druid, but I think like just the devastating feeling of just like top decking a Bluegill Warrior, because with Aggro Druid, perhaps more than any deck, you are at the mercy of what your next card is, right? So your job is to load your deck in a way that your next card is always very strong. Like how old school Zoo used to be. So having like double Innovate and 2 Bluegill Warriors and 2 Murloc War Leaders in your deck just gives you so many miserable draws from there that I feel like I'd just rather have more things like Bitter Tide Hydras.
Exactly. Innovating out an 8/8, at least in my opinion, feels as good most of the time as innovating out a Finger.
Right. It's vulnerable to a couple of things that Finger necessarily isn't, as long as the Finger gets to go off. But there's so many options that you can play. There's like Shell Shifters, Bitter Tide Hydras, Living Mana, of course, is just in every version because that card is just absurd.
Yeah.
But there's so many other tools that you can play where you don't also have to expose yourself to these 4 other garbage cards in your deck and expose yourself to Hungry Crab tech that everyone else is running on ladder.
We're even seeing the kind of less all-in versions, as you mentioned before, with the Shell Shifter. Even Menagerie Warden has seen some play recently. Yeah, copying 8/8s. There was one deck list, I forget, I apologize, I forget who the original creator of that list was, but I remember that Tyler was playing it.
Interesting.
And having some success with it. But now we've got Izzy on the Jade Druid, so finally, like, a little bit of order has been restored. Jade Druid does still exist. I'm sure several of the teams have brought Jade Druid and just opted to go with the other class.
Yeah, of course. And I think, when I mention that Jade Druid these days is slightly more resilient against these kind of board-focused aggressive decks, Paladin is perhaps the exception to that, because Druid doesn't have the consistent tools to break apart the early synergy, right? So, Murloc into Rockpool Hunter or Murloc into Coin War Leader, all that kind of stuff. Like, Druid just quite often has to let that happen.
Yeah.
And then, furthermore, even if they do stabilize, if they get like a big Primordial Drake clear, if they manage to just clear the board and then start to gather resources with Auctioneer, all that kind of stuff, like Paladin just has the tools to shut down one big late game push from a Jade Druid anyway, with Sunkeeper Tarim, etc., potentially a Quality Consecrate as well. So Paladin just checks all the boxes when it comes to just being like an anti-Druid class in general. One
thing that Jade Druids can do and has done over the course of the last year that can win against any matchup is just, innovate out Fandral on turn 1. Just get a nice 3/5 body that can trade with anything the aggressive decks have got.
Yeah, Fandral not quite the card it used to be. It's still good enough to be in the deck just because of like Wrath and Nourish.
No Raven Idol though.
There's no Raven Idol, there's no Living Roots, right? That when Innovate Fandral came out, you were scared of Wrath, Living Roots, and Raven Idol. Those are the things that terrified you. Now there's really only Wrath that makes a big impact. Like, sure, Feral Rage is nice, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Impacts like Raven Idol, Living Roots, and Wrath were far more devastating to the opponent. And if an Innovate Fandral comes down, you're hardly scared of, like, Nourish, right? Yeah. Like, if there's then second Innovate coin Nourish following that up, well, okay, friend, you win this game. That's fine. You can have this one.
Now, with the perfect caster knowledge that I have, I actually think that...
you heard it here first.
Perfect knowledge...
Falcone has perfect caster knowledge.
Of the hands. Perfect caster knowledge of the hands. I even think Noble Sacrifice would have ended up being better here for Mitsuhide, especially if Izzy goes ahead and plays the Fandral here. Potentially would have blocked Peru from dealing with these Murlocs. However, Getaway Kodo is the pick that makes sense. You're playing against what could be a very value-oriented deck. Getting more value yourself is a surefire way of winning and lasting into the late game. Yeah,
your job in this matchup is definitely just to tempo as hard as you possibly can. Though. Yeah. I don't like... Beating Jade Druid on value is a nightmare for any deck, even one that is as value-heavy as Paladin can be with the repeated, Stonehill Defenders, Curator, all the value engines that they do have in the deck. It's still nothing when it comes up against the Infinite Jade engine, but crucially now for Izzy, that Wrath has been picked up. Like I said, this is really the only early game card that's backbreaking when paired with Innovate Fandral. Feral Rage is nice, 8 extra health that you wouldn't have got otherwise while you remove a minion, but this isn't really going to be a matchup where your health total is super important. It's going to be a battle for board control first and foremost.
Yeah, Mitsuhide doesn't actually have that many options here. He can play the Rockpool Hunter, buff up the Murloc, he can play a second Hydrologist. Big deal. Izzy has all of the tools that he needs next turn to get rid of every Murloc from the board. Paladin, very, very tribal-oriented class here. Well, very tribal-oriented deck. And just preventing all Murloc synergy is a pretty good way of just beating the Paladin entirely.
Gonna go with Feral Rage here just for mana efficiency, which I do agree with, because once this board is cleared, we talked about this before. There is one card that Paladin can potentially use to affect the board from hand prior to turn 4 in realistic decks that you might be coming up against, and that is Bluegill Warrior. If Bluegill Warrior is the card, that doesn't clear the Fandral, which means you get another turn of Fandral guaranteed against this deck. So you might as well be mana efficient, go with the Feral Rage. Even though the Wrath is the more important card, 100% of the time you get to play that next turn. You can also squeeze in Wild Growth or a Hero Power, depending on what you need to react to.
Yeah, this Fandral is looking like it's going to live forever at the moment. I wonder if this time Noble Sacrifice is the pick, though. Do you think the infinite value is more important here? Repentance just isn't good against Jade Druid. Like, great, it hits a Jade Spirit and reduces that health to 1. Because it doesn't affect the Jade Golems, it's just not worthwhile. I didn't catch what that was.
It was sack.
It was sack, but right, okay, good. I was looking at you, Sottle, at the wrong time.
Can't blame you. Wrath this 2-2, see what happens. If it's Redemption, you can Hero Power it down. If nothing happens, you pretty much confirm that it's Noble Sacrifice at that point.
Hero Power.
So you can Hero Power the face if you really want to. You can also just play Wild Growth and not attack if you really want to go that way and protect your Fandral against Consecration. And next turn, you just curve into Jade Behemoth anyway. Because curving into Jade Behemoth actually feels pretty important for you right now.
This is fine too, because if there was a true silver champion in Mitsuhide's hand, then getting rid of the secret with the Hero Power doesn't change your opponent's play. A true silver champion would still have dealt with the Fandral. Yep. With the Wild Growth, it sets up for the Jade Behemoth, and the Druid really does start to get going.
So this is now, from Netherlands' perspective, this is the first turn where Nourish could be cast alongside this Fandral. So is that knowledge worth them spending their entire turn consecrating this Fandral Staghelm?
I think it is. I think they have to.
Do you now?
Or do they have to? Well, they could hold on to the Consecration for hopefully an Equality later, but they do have a Primordial Drake for that. Equality Drake on turn 10 is actually a great comeback mechanic for the Paladin.
How dead are you by turn 10, though? That's my question.
If Nourish happens with the Fandral on board, you're very dead by turn 10. So I think...
That's an excellent point.
I think the Consecration is mandatory here.
Move quickly.
I'm feeling disrespectful, Falcon. I don't know. My brain is telling me that it's Vilefin and Hero Power instead. If that secret was something a little bit more promising than Getaway Kodo, then maybe that would be better. But Netherlands deciding they're just going to have to suck it up and consecrate the Fandral here, and that gives Izzy a brand new board to develop on. Jade Behemoth will do that quite nicely. Crucially, perhaps for Netherlands, the J count only at 1-1 so far, because most of this early game has been dictated by that Fandral Staghelm. There is the True Silver coming out, being an absolute tease to the Netherlands, one turn too late.
Yep, everything went wrong for Mitsuhide there. He didn't go with your play, which would have been just leave the Fandral alive. He would not have been punished if he did leave the Fandral alive. So unfortunately, just didn't work out very well. And now what? Now is it just hero power? Valfen Inquisitor hero power? God, that feels bad.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was so concerned about on the previous turn, is that, like, consecrate into what? Like, what was your curve with that plan? I don't know. It was a really horrible spot to be in, though. I definitely, like, would have to sit down and genuinely just stop talking and think for like 90 seconds and try and figure out what I would have done that turn. It was a really, really tough spot to be in, and it's rare these days. You said, hey, Innovate Fandral can win games you're not supposed to win. Yeah. And my counterpoint was, well, Fandral isn't quite the card it used to be. If you do nail that Wrath alongside the Fandral, then yeah, that thing's an absolute monster.
We touched upon the Fandral into Nourish a few times as well. That would have just won Izzy the game if the scenario came up, though Mitsuhide played around it perfectly and it was never drawn anyway. There it is. Just a little bit too late. Well, again, not that it would have mattered because Mitsuhide did play around it.
Right.
Though, it's still highly relevant here, as Izzy's hand is now lacking many threats. Yeah, there's a Jade Spirit, but there's also now a Nourish. And Izzy could do with the restock, even if he waits until next turn and then restocks.
Yeah, there's no real reason to Nourish right now, I don't think. Just dump your hand as best you can. Your big concern here is just generating enough of a board presence so that you can clear anything that comes down from the opponent. Yeah. Since the True Silver is in play, you're losing your 3-2, and then if there's like a big minion, if there's like a few minions, a couple of Murlocs dropped by Mitsuhide, and you've taken the time out to Nourish, well, then next turn, you're going to have to swipe the board to make sure they can't land Spike Ridge Steed, right? Because that's the big denial point. So I like loading minions up on going into their turn 6 just to make sure you can kind of stop any of this nonsense from happening, right?
Do you remember that consecration that was in Mitsuhide's hand earlier?
I do, yeah.
How good would that have been right now?
Quite strong.
Unfortunately, a little bit early for Primordial Drake. Though, 3 minions on the board, 2 of them are Murlocs. It does fall to Izzy to make these trades. Not too much for him to complain about, though. He can even just Nourish into Tark Reaper. Oh, so that's a getaway Kodo on the board that's going to put a 1-1 probably in hand.
If he wants to continue denying Spike Ridge Steed from happening 100% of the time, he cannot Nourish into Tark Reaper, because there's no 3 damage attack to throw into the Vilefin, so he wouldn't be able to clear the board.
Right.
So I would suspect that Peru still keep that in mind, and the Nourish will have to wait a little bit longer here. He can choose to make a weird trade or swipe face, like this, to give a token back to the hand instead of the 1-3. It's a pretty heads-up play, and trade with the 2-2 here because you want to keep your 3 health minion out of range of Drake for 1 turn from now, and then just drop the Tark Reaper behind all of this. Yep, perfect. I like this play.
Yep, Tark Reaper almost fits the curve perfectly, but does a great job of protecting the minions already on the board. Sunkeeper Tarim there, one of the most powerful Paladin cards, I think it's fair to say, not looking so powerful in this spot. Unfortunately, it'll be buffing more of Izzy's minions than it would be doing good for himself. Of course, the 1-mana minion into the Spike Ridge Steed does give Mitsuhide a pretty good board, and it is going to take a lot for Peru to get rid of it.
Yeah, actually worth thinking about there. When I was talking about denying the Spike Ridge Steed, once you got the knowledge that it was Getaway Kodo that you activated, it didn't matter which one of those things you killed first.
No way of denying it.
It was always a 1-mana minion that was going back into the hand. So potentially you could have tried to disrespect the Spike Ridge just a little bit more, but if you left a minion in play, you're also then giving the Spike Ridge Steed charge, which is just a whole different animal. So I still like the full clear. Does go ahead and Nourish now that he's run out of value in the hand. Gadgetzan Auctioneer twice with a Jade Idol in hand as well, looking like some potential big cycle turns can happen in the future. And I don't think there's anything too wrong with just letting the status quo continue here for a turn or two, although actually there is, and its name is Primordial Drake. This board is disgustingly bad against Primordial Drake.
Something they have just noticed is that Mitsuhide's only got 14 health left.
Yes.
We're actually rapidly reaching the end of the game, and again, it's the Druid, it's the more control deck that's been the aggressor here.
Innovate Fandral will do that to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is about the only play Peru could have made which did not lose the game in devastating fashion to Primordial Drake. So again, I really like the way they have played this game so far. The Feral Rage on turn 3, knowing that they were going to guarantee the Wrath on the following turn. The way they made the trades previously to give themselves maximum chance, deny maximum value from Getaway Kodo and maximum protection against Primordial Drake, and now again this turn continuing to respect how bad Primordial Drake would be for them.
The one problem with this play, as we can see, and as I mentioned a moment ago, that really powerful Paladin card, the Sunkeeper Tarim, which was looking weak because of how wide Izzy's board is, now it's not looking so bad.
Yeah, and the more and more Netherlands start to grab board control here with small minions. Yeah, the Silverhand Recruit that's in hand, the Tidal Hand Hero Power making more 1/1s, Rockpool Hunter is a 2/3. The more of these small minions they can get down, the better and better Sunkeeper Tarim becomes.
Jade Spirit does give Izzy the option to go wide and you know, try and put a stop to the power level of the Sunkeeper Tarim, but can he afford to not just play Gadgetzan Auctioneer this turn? It does seem very strong, but he does have to rely on drawing some cheap spells straight away. Something like an Earthen Scale, like if you can go Auctioneer, Jade Idol, Earthen Scales, maybe then another Jade Idol, it could be insane, but it also could just whiff straight away.
Yeah, he's also down an Innovate already, the early game Innovate, which would... That's pretty much your best drawer at this point, and as we can see it, it's just Auctioneer one spell. That's all available to him unless he starts setting off a chain. One Feral Rage, one Innovate, one Wrath have all been used early in that Fandral exchange. So it is pretty much down to just the Earthen Scales, the second copies of those cards, and potentially the second Jade Idol as well that he can pick up, which is not a huge chunk remaining in his deck.
Alright, so is he just actually not going to play the Auctioneer? Going to just go with the Swipe and the Jade Spirit. I like this. Leaves Mitsuhide with only one minion on the board, so Sunkeeper Tarim isn't too devastating, especially given how wide Izzy's board is now. Primordial Drake also doesn't actually do all that much, doesn't clear anything at all. In fact, if Primordial Drake came down and Mitsuhide had to trade the Curator into the Tar Creeper, then it would clear Netherlands' board.
I wonder...
Is it Kodo time?
It's about as much value as Kodo's ever going to get, really. Like, the Jades are running out of control from this point. You do have the Outdoor combo that you could use to snipe a Jade later, but it would mean holding on to a bunch of cards in hand and just failing to, like, tempo out against Druid, which is basically what you want to do at all times. And this just allows a very clean and efficient board clear overall.
I think this is the second Kodo that we've seen from Netherlands today. Because they had the one against
everyone in Hunter as well.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's the Earthen Scales, which would have been the next draw off of the Gadgetzan Auctioneer had it played last turn. Now, though, he can play the Auctioneer into two cheap spells. It's a higher chance of getting a third.
Yeah, continuing to summon as well, even though, of course, there is some upside of just loading your deck with the cheap spells at that point when you're going on an Auctioneer turn, but he knows he can't really afford to take that risk. He needs the extra board presence right now, even though the 4/4 just gets sniped down immediately by the True Silver. It's still siphoning away a target from that Auctioneer, which then threatens to eat up the rest of the board afterwards.
Yeah, now Netherlands picking up another big boy. I was going to say the big boy, but Primordial Drake is pretty big himself. Tyrion Fordering has the potential of just shutting down the game entirely. Izzy just wants to deal this last little bit of damage, but Mitsuhide not going to make that easy.
Yeah, Tyrion, definitely a huge defensive wall here. Mitsuhide will be, as you said, concerned about his life total. As much as Izzy wants to deal those last few points of damage, Mitsuhide will be realizing that he has very little to play with here, but he's also safe in the knowledge that both swipes have been used for board control already. So as long as he keeps control of the board, there's not going to be charge minions and there's not going to be direct damage coming out from Jade Druid.
So.
Right. The only issue here is just how frustratingly inefficient the Auctioneer kill is, and I think that's the reason why we are seeing the Tarim come out. because otherwise it was just miserably inefficient to double trade into an Auctioneer and then True Silver down the 4-4, even though it let you develop a stronger turn behind that with Tyrion Hero Power potentially. It just meant you gave up far too many resources trading in, so this just seems like a more powerful play overall.
Curious as to Mitsuhide playing the Rockpool Hunter before the Tarim there. He actually ended up with less total stats this way, as he would have had a 4-4 and a 2-3 as opposed to a 3-3 and a 3-3. I don't think it particularly matters here, though.
It's a good point. I've never really considered that.
It's like one stat. It would have been
Yeah,
one
you literally, you lose one stat.
Yeah. Gentle Megasaur not looking like the worst draw there. 2 3-3 Murlocs on the board. Wind Fury is a lot of damage. Attack is a lot of damage. Of course, Mitsuhide could Hero Power first if you wanted to go with that line. Instead, going with old reliable Tyrion.
Counter argument, Tyrion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just pushing. Recognize now the Netherlands that they have fully turned the corner here. Even with only 11 health to play with, they are fully the aggressors in this matchup now. And Primordial Drake does make a dent in this board, but not much more than that. Those 3 health minions from Tarim. 3 is just such a frustrating number to stare down as the opponent. You know, Shamans with Lightning Storm, even Volcano, because, you know, multiples of 3 can get outside of 15 so very quickly.
It's not horrible for Izzy, Drake, Earthen Scales to buff up Aya, trade Aya into Tyrion, trade the 5-5 into Tarim. It does just leave the small things on the board, well, just 3 3-1s. And it also leaves Izzy with a 6-6 Jade Golem. It's not horrible. It's just, is Jade Behemoth better? I still think the Drake is better.
Drake definitely seems like the most promising play. Something else you have to consider now is that Auctioneer potentially getting stranded in the hand at this point. Earthen Scales is a card that you would want to synergize with that at some point. But leading out with the Drake, no matter what happens, the downside, of course, is that you lose the value trade here as well of the 5-3 into the Tarim, because you do that 2 damage to your own guy anyway, so you're not even preserving any value there. It's just not a pretty play overall, but he does go for your line here. But Murloc War Leader and Gentle Megasaur can now make an absolute mess of this board state.
Is it actually possible for Mitsuhide to just win this game, win this turn? I don't think it is, but it can't be that far off. With Wind Fury.
Wind Fury would still only
damage,
push, yeah. It's just a little bit short. +3 attack is a single clean trade into the 4-8, so is Poisonous. They both essentially do the same thing. It's just +3 attack is a bit more aggressive to the face, whereas Poisonous is more resilient against the additional large minions that are going to be coming down from Jade Druid in the future.
More aggressive to the face. I like it. At some point in this game, Mitsuhide has shifted the tide, taken the control away from the Jade Druid, and now it looks like it's going to be really tough for Izzy to come back.
Yeah, this looks like Aldor the 6-6 and Jam Face to me. Seems like a solid plan.
I say this every time a Jade Druid's in this position, but it feels like there's no other comeback. Yogg-Saron is a possibility.
Sound the Yogg alarm. Yogg-Saron, the caster's new Deathwing.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, Yogg-Saron is a card that regularly does see play in the Jade Druid. Unfortunately, not right now. And now, obviously, it could still get drawn from the Auctioneer, but it wouldn't be doing much.
The difference is, like, back in the day when, you know, oh, how can you possibly win this game? Oh, he could draw Deathwing. Like, very rarely did Deathwing even actually ever win those games when it was that far gone, whereas, yes, Yogg can actually just win any game.
Yeah. Just summon a Jade Golem, Shadow Flame it, play Call of the Wild.
Job done.
Yeah. Has to be specifically, like in the old days, it could have just been, okay, Twisting Nether and then summon some stuff. But obviously, Yogg actually has to live now to do its thing.
Yeah. More importantly, Peru are trying to find answers here with the Auctioneer. They hit Innovate into Wild Growth, which was about as good a chain of draws as they could have possibly found, but still just no answers to the board state. And Izzy is going to fall short for Peru. It's Netherlands that are going to go out to the 2-1 lead. And even through that devastatingly fast start with the Innovate Fandral, with Feral Rage and Wrath to back it up, even with that fast start, even with the miserable turn 4 of consecrate a 3-1 Fandral and say go, Paladin is favored enough in that matchup just to be able to push through in the end.
Such a turnaround from Mitsuhide there, both in that one game and in the series as a whole, as Thijs and Mitsuhide have brought Netherlands back forwards into the lead, hoping to break the curse of today, where Netherlands know that they're the better known team, they know they're the more popular guys, they want to show that popularity does sometimes equal winning in Hearthstone.
It would be a hell of a streak to break at this point. I think overall, like, the favorites have been winning fairly consistently throughout HGG. When you look at the group standings, when you kind of filter through the group and say, okay, which country is the big name in here? Well, they're sitting at the top of the group usually, right? You look at USA and
Canada,
Ukraine, Russia, right? They're all starting to pick up wins. But today, for some reason, we've just entered Bizarro World. Like, the favorites are just losing over and over again. So it would be a massive streak to break for Netherlands if they, as the favored team, the favored country in this matchup, would be able to come out with the win.
Yeah, it's weird that we're saying it would be the end of the streak if the favored team does win, but that's just the day that we've had.
It's just the world we live in now.
Day full of upsets. It's been very entertaining and very, I think, full of suspense. And I know I'm full of suspense today. I don't know what I'm hoping happens.
So excitable. It's adorable.
I love Hearthstone.
He genuinely does. This is the great thing. He's so excited and happy to be able to watch Hearthstone.
We all love Hearthstone. That's why we're here. That's why you guys are watching.
Really loves it though.
I do.
Really.
It's true.
We should just get a room. Daniel Falcone and Hearthstone. Yeah.
I do. Like, I just sit there in my room at night with my tablet. I'm just playing it.
That's too much information.
All right, next game is going to be Nandib versus Tyler, I believe. Tyler as the 4th player for Team Netherlands. I'm kind of surprised to see him 4th. The whole of Team Netherlands have a lot of prestige, but Tyler is one of these guys that a lot of people have respect for. A lot of people watch his stream because, as we mentioned earlier, he's always like top 50 legends somewhere, often top 10 legends.
It's always top 1.
Even, well, yeah, on 3 servers. Like,
right.
after 23 hours of streaming, he doesn't seem to suffer from fatigue. He still continues to win games. I've seen him, like, after 19 hours saying, I could end now, but it feels like it'd be a waste of time if I haven't progressed up the rank. I just want to climb another 50 ranks first, and then I'll, like he's ranked 60, and he says, I just want to climb another 50 ranks, and then I'll end the stream.
Seems fair. Yeah, and I made the point before, you know, we've thrown the term ladder god around. We've thrown the term, you know, has a ton of great results on ladder, all this kind of stuff. And like all that does is when we apply it to people who can, you know, fairly regularly finish top 100, that's not quite ladder god status. Ladder god status is, you know, rank 1 legend on all 3 servers in the same day, right? Yeah. That is what Tyler has been able to achieve during these marathon streaming sessions that we're talking about. So if there is one man that you want to hold up as the shining example of a Hearthstone grinder, right now it is Tyler.
And this man has also played a lot of Quest Rogue. He's one of those players that just, again, grinded and grinded and grinded. And I'd probably place him as one of the best Quest Rogue players in the world.
I would not dispute that for 1 second.
And picking up Glacial Shard and Igneous Elemental in their opening hand, that's something a good Quest Rogue player would do, right?
Daniel, please.
Actually throwing away the Shard.
Yeah, I'm actually not a fan of Glacial Shard, particularly in the mirror. It's generally only a card that you're keeping against very aggressive decks. I think in the mirror, you want your bounce effects, you want Igneous Elemental. If you're keeping Igneous Elemental, you want the extra tools to go alongside that, such as the Firefly, to be able to you know, be Flame Elemental number 3 for you, and then you're only 1 bounce effect away. So there was a very large percentage of the deck that has significant upside over Glacial Shard in that position, so no surprise to see it thrown away.
Let the race to complete the quest complete. Nandib has Firefly in his hand. If he picks up an Igneous Elemental, then he's getting pretty close. He'd then have all of the tools that he needs. Tyler just needs one more way of generating a Flame Elemental, and then he's done.
Right.
He's got the Igneous, that gives him 2 Flame Elementals. He's got a Ferryman, that could give him the 3rd. It just becomes a big puzzle as both players try to work out the fastest way of completing the quest.
Yeah, and crucial as well is like mana cost of the whole situation. So for example, for Tyler to like play the 3 Flame Elementals that we can quote see right now, see is a weird word, but like know he has access to. Yeah. So that would cost him 3 mana for the Igneous, 4 and 5 for the 2 Flame Elementals that come out, and then 6, 7 for the Ferryman, and then 8 for the 3rd Flame Elemental to come down. So that's 8 mana he would need to allocate to those 3 at that point. And then if it's another Bouncer, that takes him up to 11 to complete the quest, whereas if it's another Firefly, then it only takes him up to 10. And actually, like, total mana cost is actually one of the most relevant things when it comes to racing to complete the quest. Because once you know how much total mana you are spending, you can start to actually figure out what your turn clock is, right? Like, how much mana can I allocate each turn so I can try and get this done on turn 4, turn 5? Like, when is it happening?
Look at this. While you were explaining that, Tyler picks up the Hungry Crab. Immediately after, Nandive picks up a Murloc. That seems like it's a slight advantage to Tyler there. He's one of the players that I believe his deck lists for playoffs, 3 out of 4 decks have double Hungry Crab in them. I think he even has an emote.
He does.
For Hungry Crab.
Yeah. Which can be used for strange purposes that he didn't quite intend, to make weird like heart symbols and things with the crab pincers. But regardless, it's a sweet emote. You should all go sub to Tyler.
Yeah. It's a good move.
Yeah, I agree. You will get value, because no matter what time of day you are awake and want to watch a streamer, Tyler will be on. So it's actually good value for your sub.
Personally, I insta-subbed to Tyler when I went into the stream and he said my name correctly. It's
nice.
not something that... I don't think you and Raven say my name right still.
Falcone?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
But yeah, so that earned an insta-sub.
Pretty sure that's right.
Oh, Raven doesn't say it right.
And Raven just says like Falk, right?
Yeah. That's cool though, it's cute.
You're cute.
Pet name. Thank you.
Prep Mimic Pod, is that a play you're looking to make here, or is Prep more valuable to be accelerating your quest turn? In the mirror, I think accelerating the quest turn is very, very powerful, but there's a trap you can fall into with this deck where you start planning for things that happen after the quest. But it's kind of like the Underpants Gnomes plan, right? There's a few question marks in the middle of your plan before you get to profit if you don't plan to get there as soon as possible.
Tyler looks like he's planning to complete the quest with Igneous Elementals. Forget Flame Elementals. I mean, me and Raven saw...
No, carry on.
Raven and I, sorry, saw a quest row complete with Tar Creepers earlier. So it is possible to do it with 3 drops. And actually...
was that the Osaka game?
Yeah, that's right.
Because I stepped outside for some air during that game and I was on break.
Yeah,
and
the quest was completed with Tar Creeper. He lost. But the quest was completed with...
So he like Mimic Podded into Tar Creepers or something?
Yeah,
okay, cool. That's awesome.
And it could happen here, especially if Nandive prevents the Igneous Elemental from dying. It might actually be best used for that card.
So if you wanted to actually complete the quest with Igneous Elementals, let's take this seriously for a second. That's 6 mana on Iggy's, and then 8 with the Ferryman, then up to 11 with the Igneous Elemental, which is the same number I ended up with on the Firefly, on the Flame Elemental count anyway.
Right. Well, there you go.
Doesn't seem too unreasonable.
And Tyler will be sitting there doing the maths right now, working out if that genuinely is the way he wants to go.
Well, here's the real thing, is that you don't actually have to commit to that kind of plan just yet. Like, you're not killing any of these Igneous Elementals just yet, and you're not bouncing any of these Igneous Elementals just yet. So you can just play Igneous Elemental number 2, and then if they're able to trade off, well, great. You can then play 4 Flame Elementals for 4 mana.
There is nothing Nandive can do about it. He's not going to want to deal with the Igneous Elementals, as you said. And he's going to know as soon as one of these Igneous Elementals comes down that there's another one because it came from a Mimic Pod.
Yes.
As long as they're tracking the hands. But again, there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, you know the Shard is there from the Netherlands perspective, though, since it's the card that's being bounced. So your ability to get value out of Igneous Elemental that way is kind of diminished by the fact that one will be consistently being frozen.
Yeah.
Like you give credit to your opponent when they start bouncing Glacial Shard turn after turn. Normally, now as people have got better and better with this deck, they don't spend entire turns playing and bouncing a minion until they're sure that they can pay that off at the end, right? So you're kind of giving credit to your opponent for being able to fulfill their quest. So this turn, Netherlands really expected Glacial Shard and Bounce to come back down again. So they're trying to plan for how they defend against a quest activation that's quicker than theirs. But the weird part is that that's not actually the reality that they live in right now. Like, they're dealing with a Glacial Shard that doesn't have the final bounce it needs right now.
Yeah. I find that in Quest Rogue mirrors, the reality that we're in tends to be a pretty strange one, where both players have to do some bizarre things, both to speed up the progress of their own quest and also prevent the progress of their opponent. That Igneous Elemental isn't going anywhere. So I guess next turn, potentially, Tyler could go Igneous Elemental Ferryman. The following turn, double Igneous Elemental.
I don't think it's right, though. Now that you see that the Glacial Shard hasn't been played, you know there's a pretty good chance that your Igneous Elementals will start to be able to trade and get value that way, right? Yeah. And if you ever get to kill your Igneous Elemental, then that mana count thing that I was doing goes completely out the window because you just play 4 Flame Elementals for 4 mana, right? That's so much cheaper than any other way you can do it. And if, from Netherlands' perspective now, they see that the Glacial Shard isn't being played, then this hand read becomes very, very straightforward. You know the Shard is there because it's been returned to hand. You know that the last bounce isn't there because then you would just see that done to set up the quest activation. So they know there is a Shard isolated in hand right now, waiting for either the final bounce effect or Shard number 2 to come out of the deck to finish the quest.
Yeah, and it may be a few turns before Peru actually gets there. There's no guarantee the next draw is going to be a bouncer. Vanish, card that Tyler just picked up, also very likely to be in Peru's deck. Very, very bad in this matchup.
Just tempoed Ferryman as a River Croc.
Huh.
That's
okay,
awesome.
Very different game plan to the one I had in mind, but it makes a lot of sense following what you were saying. Is it possible for Tyler to win the game without completing the quest, though?
I mean, if neither deck ever completes the quest, then yes, one of them will eventually win. But I think this is just, trying to defend the board as best as he possibly can.
That would be the weirdest quest rogue mirror that I've ever seen if neither of them complete the quest.
There's a weird, knock-on effect that comes from this as well by, he's generated 6 power on board now, has Tyler. So that kind of requires a board response from Peru. So it might make them play, more higher quality minions. And then if higher quality minions are played, then the Igneous Elementals get to trade because there's 2 attack, 3 attack minions on board that you're forcing your opponent to play that they wouldn't have had to otherwise.
Right. Nandibe, considering what to do about this messy board.
Messy's a good word.
It's just a guaranteed 4 damage each turn, unless he's willing to sacrifice the Glacial Shard, which he definitely isn't.
Yeah, there's no way he can just reset his entire count or just trust the fact that the one remaining card in his deck that he can rely on at that point is just Glacial Shard number 2, the natural one.
So, just going to take a very passive turn here.
Ooh, Tar Creepers.
Tar Creepers. We've seen a lot of Tar Creeper over the last couple of days. It's going to actually defend Tyler's board, if he even wants it defended.
Quest is done here in a variety of ways, though, for Tyler. When I say quest is done, I mean the tools are all there. Now that the Igneous Elemental gets to die, there is 2 Flame Elementals being played and then vanish, and then 2 more Flame Elementals that get played. You can do that at any point you want now in the near future since you have access to the preparation. So this is the point where where Netherlands will all communicate with each other and just try and lay out the very best possible game plan. Do they want to use the preparation for the vanish so they speed up their own quest activation? Do they want to just let the Flame Elemental vanish thing happen naturally so they can prep out the quest later? What is the most efficient, most punishing, most aggressive way that they can do this?
This is one of those games where the communication between the players, I think, is at its most important because there is so much to think about. We're going to see the rope burning every turn, I think, possibly for the rest of this game. Maybe this is one of those games where Tyler's going to need his teammates to just shut up so that he can do the maths that you've been describing.
All right, this is getting really, really complicated. So right now, Netherlands are on 3 Igneous Elementals, 2 Flame Elementals. Those are the relevant counts for them. Whereas the relevant count for Peru is about to be 4 Glacial Shards, thanks to that Shadow Step pickup. And this hand, which was looking miserable, is now looking absolutely delightful.
Yep, quest is complete, quest is activated, South Sea deckhand, and a 5 attack Patches going to hop out and just deal with the Flame Elementals, I imagine. You don't really care about the Igneous Elementals anymore, they're frozen, just forget them.
Going face
allows...
allows...
Patches has already gone, okay.
Yeah, Patches has already been played.
Second time today I've made that mistake.
Right, it's because Peru have actually chosen to still include Swashbuckler in the deck, which is not that common these days. So you'd be forgiven, right? You're looking at a hand that has both deckhands in it. You're going, well, of course Patches is still in the deck. But yeah, Peru still choosing to rely on Swashbuckler, which is why they have that Deadly Fork in hand as well. And now, Prep Vanish will complete the quest this turn for Tyler, although the quest itself will not be playable afterwards.
Yeah, that's very difficult.
This completes the quest as well. And it's actually getting done on
and
Igneous
activates
Elemental.
it as well, yeah. And this is where Nandai may be punished for not getting rid of these Flame Elementals. Now, Prep, activate the quest, trade them in. It looks like Peru is ahead, but Tyler has just flipped that around.
This game has been silly.
It's been complicated.
It has. Hopefully I've kept up.
2
with it.
words that are meaning the same thing right now.
15 damage staring down. Stone Tusk Boar in hand is 16. Vanish brings the Stone Tusk Boar back to hand. Sorry, Stone Tusk Boar in hand is 20. Vanish brings the Stone Tusk Boar back to hand. Stone Tusk Boar comes down for 25. So if Peru here do not trade or vanish or make some kind of defensive play, there will be lethal set up for Netherlands. But Peru have many, many options to prevent this from happening.
They're able to charge into the Panda. They're able to put a 5/5 taunt up and a 5/5 without a taunt. That is the true strength of the Bilefin Tidehunter. Deadly Fork is irrelevant, really. I guess it's just a 3-mana 5/5.
This is the other argument behind Swashbuckler. I think the really big point is players realize they did not want to pull patches from their deck early, as we've seen here.
Yeah.
Like, you saw the difference. But then the secondary argument that came alongside that was like, well, Swashbuckler, it's going to give you a spell, and a spell has to compete with like a 5/5 minion for 1 or 2 mana if it's going to be like a good card in my hand.
Yeah.
If it gives me a minion, that minion's just going to cost 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. It's just not going to be anywhere near as efficient as the actual cards that I put in my deck.
This play here was very strong because it defends from the charge plus bounce play. Because if the only method you've got for charging is a charge plus even several bounces, doesn't matter. The charge has to trade into the 5/5 with taunt.
Right.
That being said, Tyler can just say right back at you with the Vanish and actually push some damage to the face. Does that achieve anything, though? It actually gives Nandai more resources because he gets to generate an extra taunt and gets to keep the one he gets put in his hand.
Yeah, I think the weird way that Netherlands have kind of been forced to play out this game has left them with actually a very slow hand in Quest Rogue terms. Like, at this point in the game, having like 3 3-drops and 2 2-drops in your hand is actually considered quite slow, considering the deck is primarily made up of 1 and 2 mana minions. So the fact that they've just gone off weirdly with Igneous Elementals in this game has actually slowed down their hand in this portion immensely. Glacial Shard is a huge pickup in this spot, though. That is such a massive tempo swing for Netherlands. Probably the best card in their deck they could have drawn in this exact situation.
Yeah, Tyler going for sheer tempo there, choosing not to bounce anything with the Panda. Now he's got a very powerful board. You're looking a little bit puzzled, so.
I just wanted freezing the taunt as opposed to the other minion. If they were going to trade something, wouldn't you rather they traded the taunt minion?
Yeah, that's true.
So that you didn't have to make that trade for them on the following turn?
I don't know. I can't explain that.
Often those decisions come down to like which minion you'd like your opponent to bounce, though. So they froze the minion that if it was bounced, which you would like to do because it's frozen, then you don't get the double value out of the Bilefin. Like, if they freeze the Bilefin, then you can go, okay, cool, I'll just take this frozen minion back to my hand, and now I get the double value by replaying it with Battlecry. So it's definitely not cut and dry, but interesting decisions nonetheless.
Oh, now this turn is hard for Tyler. If he's going to vanish now, he could push 5 damage through first, play the Stone Tusk Boar, push another 5, vanish, Boar again. That's only 15, though. He's not quite at 25 just yet.
And that's already 7 mana, so Ferryman on the Boar would be the end of his 9. He could not play the Boar again afterwards.
Question is the vanish a necessity? Because Nandaib is getting very close to just having lethal now. Two minions need to connect to the face, plus the weapon, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, the vanish value is a little bit weird here, because you definitely want to trade away these taunts, because you don't want to vanish the board with the taunt still on it, and then give your opponent 3 5/5 taunts the next turn, right? Because you would give them the 2 actual naturals and the Bilefin back in hand that they can generate 3 5/5s with, so they are just going to try and set up a board state again and really try and push the idea of this vanish for lethal.
Yeah, freezing seems just as good as trading into here. If Tyler can set up lethal for next turn, It doesn't look like he can.
No, the trade with the boar means that they are just looking at their hand and going, hey, we have like an Igneous Elemental on the board now and an Igneous Elemental to spare. We will just trade every single turn, and they run out of stuff way before we do.
But it's only going to take Nandai one minion with charge to win this game. Even a bounce would have done it this turn. There was very, very high potential for Nandai and Peru to just win, but your very disappointed reaction with the preparation was probably mirrored by them.
I mean, let's be real. I'm rooting for Tyler. He's my teammate.
That's true.
Oh.
That's going to do it.
Yep.
Netherlands breaking the curse that's been set up over the last 24 hours, even more than 24 hours, due to the Austria versus Russia game. Tyler looking full of joy and surprise. Like, he could feel the pressure.
Yeah,
relief,
sure.
That's the word. As Netherlands take their 3rd win in the Hearthstone Global Games, all but guaranteeing them a spot in Phase 2 of the competition.
That was a really sick Quest Rogue mirror, I have to say. Like, I was not a fan of Quest Rogue in the early days of the expansion. I've said some very nasty things about the deck on Twitter and probably on these broadcasts as well at some point, but I've come around to it a little bit as I've seen better and better players get better and better at the deck itself, and I can kind of see through the nonsense it does to see, you know, some of the power that these top players can really pull out of the deck when they're playing it well. But that mirror in particular, it was just so out of left field, like Igneous Elemental being used to activate the quest and like coming down to the very, very wire in the end. It wasn't like a one-sided blowout like it quite often is. But in the end, Netherlands will be over the moon to have finally, Falcone, put an end to this underdog blowout that we've been seeing so far.
All right, well, we are going to have a chat with Mitsuhide now. Hey, Mitsuhide, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Congratulations for your win. You're now 3 wins in the Hearthstone Global Games and pretty much guaranteed through to the next phase in the competition. How are you feeling?
Feeling really great. Like, towards the end in the last game, the suspense was really getting, I was super stressed about that. So yeah, very happy.
Yeah, talk to me about that last Quest Rogue game just for a second, because like, at what point did you decide you were completing on Igneous Elementals? Because I was like counting like the total mana cost to complete on Igneous and complete on Flame Elemental, and was it like a last minute decision when you got that final bounce, or were you planning to do it that way the whole time, or like what happened that game?
Yeah, so we knew we already played 3 and we needed only 1 bounce to do it, and yeah, in the end it planned out pretty well, I would say, with the prep quest.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just we didn't want to do it with Igneous Elemental, of course, but it was the best option.
I want to know a little bit about what your communication was like, specifically during the last game. There was a lot of complicated turns, a lot of complicated maths going on. Was there a point where you just had to kind of step back and let Tyler take control, or was it a team effort all the way through?
It was a team effort, but especially in the last game, we decided to just not say anything when we didn't have anything good to say.
Yeah.
So that the people who were really experienced with Quest Rogue, like Tyler, could talk more about their decisions and stuff.
Right.
Because otherwise it would get too messy if everyone was just talking.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Do you have like specific like allocated roles on your team? Like one guy who's like focused on hand reads or like tracking the decks or anything like that? Or do you all just kind of just throw in input when you have it?
We all kind of do it. Like hand reads is mostly Theo who does it, but yeah, okay. Everybody just says what he thinks is right at that moment.
Fair enough. Well, congratulations one more time. Go and celebrate your win. Thank you for your time, man.
Well played, guys.
Yes.
Well, there you go. As we keep saying, curse broken. The popular team wins. Not feeling so great for Peru now, who are 0-2 in the group. They're going to have to work very, very hard to progress to the next phase of the competition, though it is still possible for them.
Yeah, recapping the series here. This was perhaps the one play that maybe could have made or break this game for Netherlands. You can see how relieved, how delighted Peru were with this top deck consecration, that they felt like maybe got them a chance. But the way the game panned out, you have to say maybe Netherlands just judged this perfectly. Yeah. They said, okay, we can take the opportunity to win the game right now on the spot. If a quality consecration happens, we still have enough gas with Highmane and co. And this is a turn we all made a big mess out of by forgetting that the Direwolf could charge, forgetting that Coin Hungry Crab could come out, but in the end it did turn out to be the perfect lethal, or just one over with the Hungry Crab getting buffed by the Wolf as well.
Yeah, just such a great setup there from Tice. Even with the Equality Consecration coming, the Big Bad Wolf stayed on the board. Savannah Haymain, as you said, still coming out next turn, and a very, very quick win after that. Very well played.
That little pause before Coin Hungry Crab
Did he forget
happened,
as well?
I wonder whether Netherlands knew that was lethal the whole time
From Tice's face expression there,
Can we get Mitsahide back just to double check?
it looked like there was a bit of a, oh yeah, all right.
Oh yeah, he's dead. Sweet.
I mean, they were looking strong even if it wasn't lethal that
Right.
turn, regardless. Next up was the Jade Druid, which wasn't quite able to take it long enough into the late game to get complete board dominance.
Yeah, Innovate Fandral into Feral Rage, into Wrath Wild Growth, and then their 3-1 Fandral had to take an entire turn to get consecrated from the Paladin, and the Paladin still just did this to them afterwards.
Yeah, pretty devastating.
Paladin's pretty good, guys. I don't know if you knew that. It's a strong deck.
It's strong, not so strong against an entourage of hungry crabs that are going to be appearing in playoffs, but finally, this was the last game, and what a game it was. So much maths on both sides. Quest completed by a 3-drop for the second time today. Igneous Elemental.
This one actually won, though.
Doing the work and
Yeah.
actually winning in the mirror. Am I right in thinking both quests were completed on turn 7 there? I think statistically that's quite late to be completing the quest.
And I think I've made this point a few times over the last couple of days, but I think you will need to get used to that kind of thing happening. I think as time goes on, just maybe one turn later than you might be expecting. Like the average turn completion might just get pushed up by 1 as these slightly slower builds with Tar Creepers start to come into play. And also as players just appreciate that just fighting for the board for a turn or two, there's nothing wrong with that. You can take your time. The quest wins the game no matter when you complete it.
I mean, especially against the more aggressive decks, if you're able to just control the board, it doesn't really matter if the quest's complete a turn later. Let's have one last look at Group B there. Netherlands, well and truly on top with a 10-5 game record, matching USA.
Do you know what's looking just a little bit scary about this group, Falcone?
What is it, the 4th place team?
It's the fact that first and second are looking to be pretty well locked up at this point. So there are 4 very accomplished countries fighting it out for one final spot. Maybe Romania are just out of the running right now. Maybe Peru have got a little bit too much to do at this point. So maybe the story of Group B at this point is the United Kingdom and Thailand just scrapping it out for that 3rd place position.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. We can't be too biased about it, but of course,
definitely can.
We do have our favourite there in the United Kingdom as we take one last look at the games today. The day of the underdog, as I'm going to refer to it forevermore. Belgium defeating Denmark, Israel toppling Finland, and then Belarus just destroying Germany.
And that game, that series, I don't even want to like mention what's noteworthy about it. If you haven't seen it, if you saw it, I don't need to remind you, you remember. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the VOD, and I am not going to spoil a thing for you. Just go do that.
Well, it's 3-0, that much is spoiled.
Yeah, but there are some finer points and details that were made that series particularly spectacular.
Brazil overcame Sweden, the Team Alliance, including ex-world champion Plus Show, and finally, breaking the curse, Netherlands come through and defeated Peru. What a day of Hearthstone it's been.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think, particularly the usage of Warlock decks in a couple of the series were definitely very noteworthy. And as you said,
Dirty Rat in the zoo was...
See, now you've just ruined it.
Oh. Darn it, that's what you meant by spoilers.
I tried so hard, guys. Yeah, but the Dirty Rat in the zoo.
I mean, saying Dirty Rat in the zoo, surely that just entices people to watch.
That's probably a fair point, but you can see now, going into tomorrow, our week does not end. We hand over to our North American broadcast partners. I like saying that. It makes it sound very official.
It is official.
Yeah, our North American broadcast partners will be taking over for some of the games that want to be played in a North American time zone. So United States will re-enter the fray against Thailand, and us, as proud British people, will be rooting for a United States resounding victory to crush Thailand and make sure that the United Kingdom can move into control of 3rd place in that group. And then Taiwan will take on Vietnam in the 2nd game of proceedings. I believe it is a Robert Wing and Cora week. I don't have 100% confirmation on that, but I think they will be taking you through the action tomorrow.
Maybe the one time in this entire competition that we want the United States to win.
That's just harsh. I'm a big fan of the United States. I've
mean,
got some good friends on that team.
We're
They're
in
all
their
great
group.
people.
We lost to them in game 1. There's got to be a little bit of bitterness.
All right, that's fair.
Guys, thanks for watching. As Sotil said, Rob, Wing, and Cora will be back at a much later time tomorrow. But from us, that's everything. Take care.